Starting our new unit on matter in both science and in reading. You'll notice if you looked on the back of your close readers that this is actually the last one because we're skipping over number 9, but we're going to come back to number 9, which is on economics and money in May. So you are going to be in this close reader, so I want you to find that close reader and you'll be able to follow along and annotate with me as we go. So the essential question for our unit is, how can something old become new? Listen to that again. How can something old become new? That's kind of an interesting question, isn't it? Because usually you think of something being new first and then becoming old, but in this case it's going the other way. It's starting out old and becoming new. So we can change things. We learned that the earth is always changing in our last unit, and it's super old, right? But we can make new shapes and stuff out of the rocks with erosion. So maybe that's what they're talking about here. We do see the 3 states of matter. We've got liquid in the water here in this little creek, solid, our water is frozen here in the igloo, and gas, you can see the steam coming out of this kettle, and that is water in a gas form. So again, every text we're reading, we're going to be thinking, how can something old become something new? Today we're going to be reading Shared Reads 1 and 2, and our first one is called Soap Shapes. So go ahead and join me on page 4 in your States of Matter close reader, and we're going to listen as we read through this procedural text. Our strategy that we're turning our focus back to for this unit is a couple of things. We're going to look at asking questions again, and then we're also going to be thinking about underlining key details. So before we even get started, it's good to start thinking of questions just by looking at the title and the picture so that we can get our brain ready to learn more about this topic. So in this case, it's called Soap Shapes, and I'm wondering what that means because most of the soap that I use is liquid soap and you can't really make it into shapes. But I see from the picture down there that this soap is in a solid form. It's more like a bar of soap. So I'm guessing that that's what they mean. And I see some shapes down there. I see a flower and I see a heart. So maybe that's what they mean, but I'll have to read on to find out more. This is a different kind of text than we have read in the past. This is a procedural text. And when we read procedural texts, we are learning the steps of how to do something. So it's laying out step by step how to create, in this case, soap shapes. So let's take a listen and then we'll look back and find the steps that we need to use to make soap shapes.
Shared Reads 1 and 2. Remember to annotate as you read.
Soap shapes. Soap can easily be sculpted into any shape you want. All it takes is imagination. Start with a cup of soap flakes, or ask someone to help you grate a bar of soap. Place the soap into a bowl and add just enough water to make it look and feel like dough. If you want colorful soap, add a few drops of food coloring. Now you can shape the soap. You may want to think of a theme, such as ocean life. You can make soap in the shape of fish, turtles, and sea stars, or use cookie cutters. Soap that you shape yourself is really fun to use. It's all water.
All right, we're going to pause there for just a moment before we read our next text. I wanted to bring your attention to some procedural words. So I told you that this was a procedural text, but a procedural text sometimes uses words that help signal that we're going on to the next step. So there's a couple of those in here. This first one here is start. That's a procedural word. And then now is another procedural word as well. And then there's other steps in here as well. So I need to read back through kind of closely just to make sure that I have the steps if I were wanting to actually go through this and make my own. So since start is a beginning procedural word, I'm going to put a 1 by that. Will you do that with me in your book? So the first step is to start with a cup of soap flakes or ask someone to help you grate a bar of soap. Step 2 is place the soap into a bowl and add just enough water to make it look and feel like dough. So that's our second step. Go ahead and put a 2 by the word place. That tells us what we're doing next. And then if we want colorful soap, add a few drops of food coloring. So this step is not necessary, but if we wanted to make it more colorful, which makes it a little bit more fun, then we're going to add some food coloring. Here's our other procedural word. So we know this is going to be a new step. We're on step 4 here. So now you can shape the soap. You may want to think of a theme. You can make the soap into fish, turtle, sea stars, or use cookie cutters. So we've got four different steps. Start with a cup of soap flakes. Put it in a bowl and add water to make it feel like dough. Add some food coloring and shape. Those are the 4 steps to making soap shapes. Let's underline a few of our key details here. This was interesting. It said it can easily be sculpted into any shape we want. We need a cup of soap flakes, and we're going to need water. I'm going to underline the things that we're going to need here. And then also a few drops of food coloring. And we might need cookie cutters if we wanted to cut them into specific themed shapes. So those are going to be important details as I am working my way through this process. So if you have a bar of soap or some soap flakes at home, you could actually give this a try if you ask your parents. I'm on page 5 for my second shared read, and this one is called It's All Water, and it's by Constance Andrea Karamis. And this text is not a procedural text like we read on soap shapes, and it's also not a fictional story. It is an end rhyme poem. But the cool thing about this end rhyme poem is that it actually is teaching us about the different forms of water. So to start, I was wondering, asking questions, why is it called It's All Water when we only see snow in the picture? We don't even see water. But I think my guess is, if I had to predict, that maybe we're going to talk about how water can be in various forms. So it's all water. All the boys and girls I know say they love to play in snow. Mention rain, what do they say? Come again some other day. As for sleet, no one's a fan. We all avoid it if we can. Who among us cares for fog, except for bullfrogs in a bog? Weather changes, as you see. It's a great variety. Drops of water start it all. Chill them, warm them, watch them fall. All right, so to start off, I'd like to do some annotating here. And I was right that we're going to talk about water in different forms. That's why we see snow here. So let's go ahead and underline the different types of weather that they mentioned in here. The first one I saw was snow. Then they talked about rain. And then sleet. That might be a word that you're not as familiar with. Sleet is kind of like frozen raindrops. And then we have fog, which is another form of water. It's water condensation, kind of like walking through a cloud. And that, I think, is all. And then I do want to underline here, chill them, warm them, because this is how we get water to change into different types. So we've got, if you have snow and you warm it, then it turns it into water as a liquid. If you have water and you freeze it or chill it, then it's going to be turning from a liquid into a solid. And then if you heat up water, like with a tea kettle on the stove, if you heat up water, it turns into a gas, into the water vapor in the air. So that part is kind of important because that's how matter changes sometimes. So now I want to look back and look for the end rhymes, and we're going to annotate those end rhymes. This one, I'm not sure if yours looks exactly like mine or not, but this one is not as obvious as some of the other end rhyme poems that we've looked at because my rhymes aren't always at the very end of the line. So that makes it a little bit trickier, but I can hear those rhymes when I read it, so I'm going to read it aloud again, and when you hear the words that are rhyming, I want you to circle them. All the boys and girls I know say they love to play in snow. We have no, did you hear it? And snow. Mention rain, what do they say? Come again some other day. Say and day. As for sleet, no one's a fan. We all avoid it if we can. Fan, can. So notice that so far, all of our rhyming words have the same rhyme. The onset or the beginning of the word is different, like the KN and the SN, but the ending is the exact same. OW, OW, AY, AY, AN, AN. That is not always the case, but so far we've got all words that are spelled the same at the end. The rhymes are spelled the same. So who among us cares for fog except for bullfrogs in a bog? Fog, bog. Weather changes as you see. It's a great variety. Okay, so here's an example of one where it doesn't have the same spelling. We have C and variety, and this EE is going to make our long E sound, right? And then we also know that Y at the end of a word often sounds like a long E as well. And so that's why these two work, C and variety, because they both make that long E sound even though they're spelled differently. Drops of water, start it all, chill them, warm them, watch them fall. All right, very good. You're going to go in and do your response to these in schoolwork, and then you can move on to Daily 5.